Welcome to this video. This is part 2 of a two-part series. In the previous video, we showed you how to do the Docker installation for installing Docker on virtual machines. Now, in this video, we are going to show you how to use Docker Stack to deploy applications to the Docker Swarm cluster. Before we continue with this video, there are two secrets that we will reveal to you in this video that took us a fair amount of effort researching to find out. So stay tuned. For this deployment, we are going to use two virtual machines, 2 or 3. It's up to you how big you want to make your cluster. We are going to assume that all these machines that you've created, you will have installed Docker on them. We recommend that you use VirtualBox or any other suitable VM software for creating virtual machines. The creation of the virtual machines will be outside the scope of this tutorial. However, you will need either a Linux workstation or a Windows PC with suitable terminal software. Now let's review what we did in the Docker installation. I'm currently connected to my one VM server. I'm going to be using this as my master server in my cluster. Now we've already shown you this. To install Docker, there are a few things that additional to this that we would like you to be aware of. In this case, you need to create a Docker group. So you would run the command on the Linux virtual machines. You will run this command on each machine, group add Docker. It will create a Docker group. And then you will run this command, and what this command will do, let us run this. As you can see with my machine, when I ran group add, it told me that it already exists. And then you would run this. It would add that to the Docker group. This is one of the secrets you need to do. Your user needs to have belonged to the Docker group. Now, as I said, I have logged in as root on this machine, so I'm basically adding my root user to the Docker group. We do recommend that you use root. And just to show you, if you don't know this, you would say sudo su or sudo su dash. So now this brings me up as root, as the root user. Always do this when you work on the server. Now here is another secret that you need to do. If you don't do this, you are going to have problems with communication. And what you do to this virtual machine, you will do to all the other virtual machines. Now we will proceed with doing the demo to show you how to create the Docker Swarm. Before we can create the Docker Swarm cluster, we need to log on to one of our VMs, the one that we have chosen and designated to be the master server. So we would log into that as the root user. Thereafter, we would run these commands. Having done that, now we can create the Docker Swarm cluster. So to do that, I'm going to run this command. It's very important after running this command to save this. I'm going to open a notepad. And save it in my notepad. Now, the reason I'm telling you that, if you lose this line, you can't add members to your Docker Swarm cluster. So what we have installed now is the master server. We now want to add worker nodes, or we have the master node, and now we want to create worker nodes. So we run this command on the worker nodes after installing Docker. In the master node, we ran this command docker swarm join token worker, and then this would give us the token that we need to use for workers to join the node. Now I have connected to the worker node, which is IP88. So now I'm going to paste this command. And I have succeeded to join the swarm. So now I have created my first worker node. After creating the first worker node, we will use the same string to be able to create all the other worker nodes. Creating a service in the Docker Swarm is similar to creating a Kubernetes deployment. Let's have a look at the commands available for Docker Service Create. And you can see it's a very rich interface with many options. I also want to have a look at Docker Service Update. The reason is we first create a service and then we can update the service. So let's continue. We're going to create an Nginx service in our Docker Swarm cluster. So we will run this command. As you can see, it takes a few seconds, but now we want to list it, so we will use the ls command, docker service ls. And I see that we have created a service called Romantic Williamson. So now if we say docker service ps, we will get the details. As you can see, it's in a state of running. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to port forward to port 8080. So we will take this command here, but notice the name has changed. It's now Romantic Williamson. So let's just paste that there. Now let's run the docker ps Romantic Williamson. This sort of shows us the history. It had shut down because we had modified it, and then it came up now with a port. So, and if we do the ls command, we can see here that it's porting to port 8080. Now I know this server is IP address 93. So let us run the curl command. And you can see it's working. We are now able to access the container, Nginx container, on port 8080. Internally, it uses port 80. We would like to make 2 replicas of this service. So in other words, I want to have 2 replicas in memory. So the next step we need to do is to go down here, and we must pass the name Romantic Williamson. Now let's have a look if we do the ls command, and we see we have 2 replicas there, and they are accessible on port 8080. So let's run the curl command again, and this time let's open the browser. And http:// and we see Nginx is working on the browser. So we are now able to access that service through the browser. We would like to downgrade the service. We are going to paste this command. This should downgrade it to from 2 replicas to 1 replica. Now let's list the services, and we see it's now downgraded from 2 replicas. It's now 1 replica. And let's also run the curl command. We see it's still working. We'll open the browser in a new tab. And it's still working. The service is still available through the browser. We would now like to delete this service. So we will run this command, docker service rm Romantic Williamson. So the rm is going to remove the Romantic Williamson service. So let's run it. And it's gone, and let's verify that. Docker service ls. And we can see it's gone. We will now be deploying applications to the Docker Swarm cluster. We will be using Docker Compose YAML files. So let us create our first Docker Compose YAML file and take the content that's on this page and put it in there. First of all, before we do that, just make sure you're logged in as root. Sudo or sudo su-. Okay, now we have done that. And it's YAML. And then paste what we have in there, in here. We've now created our Docker Compose YAML file. Now let us deploy it. It started, it shut down, and it's now ready. And we can also say docker stack ls. And there we have. And notice that this is now slightly different, the output, to our previous output. And we have successfully deployed this to the Docker Swarm. You are welcome to try the next example here and that is to deploy a Nginx service. But this serves the purpose to show how to do it. We trust you found this tutorial both interesting and useful. Please tell your friends about it, and also please give us a like, join our channel so that our channel can grow. Thank you.